Hello guys and girls, Bored now back with you, and I'm back to the X-Files. This is going to be my review of episode 11 of the first season, and it is called Eve. And I think we're really getting into gear now on the X-Files at this point in the season anyway, because this is another really strong episode. And it's one that I think does get better the more you see it as well. But it's another biggie. It's quite meaty. It does well in the way it sort of adds to the mythology of the show. It brings up the idea of super soldiers, which is an idea they return to in later seasons. So I really like that it all kind of starts here. And Mulder and Scully are on great form, really working well together and combating each other's ideas. And we have a fantastic guest star, which is Harriet Harris, who's this really great character actress who you see on a lot of different things pop up. Normally plays quite unhinged sort of characters. Probably a lot of people might best know her for Desperate Housewives. She has a really memorable turn on that. Also, I saw her in 6 Feet Under, and she pops up a lot and does tend to play sort of psychopaths, but or certainly unhinged characters. Let's say that. But she always makes an impression. She's got a real presence. And just so convincing, so natural, but always brings a lot of, I think, emotion, humanity to her roles. It's not just like she's this kind of over the top psychopath. She kind of grounds it with some kind of subtleties and human emotion. So. And this is a very meaty role for her to play. And as you get into the plot and the reveals start to come, we sort of see that she's kind of playing different personas, essentially. So I think the guest star in this episode really elevates it. And it's already a strong episode, but I think because they got that casting so right, then I think that really elevates it. You've also got the two, or I guess it's one young girl. I'm guessing, although I think they're actually twins in real life as well as in this. But I think they really stand out as well. I think they do a great job, and the casting agents did a great job. So I'll get into the obviously full spoilers, but I'll get into the premise because there are a couple of swerves in here, and it's the sort of episode that sets you down one path and then kind of changes. I'd say like maybe a quarter of the way through it. So at the start, this man turns up dead in his back garden. Basically, he's been strangled. And his daughter, is it Cindy? I think originally, she's like right near him. Sorry, it's Tina originally. Cindy's the other twin. Tina. She's like right near the body at the time, and there's this whole mystery around it because it's revealed that he only left her alone for 10 minutes, and yet he was found with strangle wounds and no signs of a struggle, and they sort of ascertained that it would have taken a lot more than 10 minutes. Not just to strangle him, but this idea that he left her for 10 minutes and all this kind of happened within that sort of time. It looks like it would have taken a lot longer, basically. So Mulder brings up this theory about UFOs and about cattle mutilation, because he claims that the father has been strangled in the same manner as that, like cattle mutilation, and he brings up this case to Scully about aliens supposedly in the past being able to like do this sort of thing, or there being this sort of similar cases, and he claims, when Scully challenges on him on this, like, why would they fly all this way just to like strangle this guy, which is a funny sort of question, but Mulder's like, well, it's to experiment sort of thing, and things kind of heat up and take a turn when they find out then there's another girl who looks identical to Tina. Her name's Cindy, and they go to her house because her father is killed in the same manner. So they obviously go to check this out, and obviously they get a surprise when they see a girl who looks identical. And when they talk to her and her mother claims that she's an only child. She doesn't have like a twin sister or anything. So Mulder's obviously making this link. Yeah, I mean, it would be some coincidence that both their fathers were killed in the exact same way. But obviously Scully's like leaning towards serial killers. And as things go on, Mulder's UFO theory becomes less and less sort of credible. And we sort of, I guess, halfway through the episode, or a bit less, we're introduced to this character, Sally Kendrick, who Harriet Harris is playing. And she's like this former doctor at like this research lab. And we find out that she was basically struck off for like these crazy experiments with like genetics, basically. And we see her on the video, and she's outlining this theory, and the doctor who Scully's talking to says we've never seen her since. She's her whereabouts is unknown. And Mulder and Scully, after Mulder gets a tip from Deep Throat, nice appearance from Deep Throat in the episode, nice cameo. Jerry Hardy doing a really good job, kind of setting up this plot and setting up like the government's involvement. He sells it really well, and it talks about like the Litchfield experiment, as he calls it, and that's when the talk of super soldiers starts coming up. But he says now they've had the idea to start with the children, to start them from birth and develop them. And so essentially this idea of them being like clones, them not being like genetically human, and he says they're based on Adam and Eve, which is, or the first two they were called Adam and Eve, so obviously getting into the religious stuff. So he gives Mulder and Scully a tip, or he gives Mulder a tip. I think at this point Scully doesn't know about Deep Throat, or did she find out before? No, sorry, she did find out in the first episode, but this is, Mulder finds an excuse to get rid of her, basically, so he can sneak off and see Deep Throat. And yeah, so Deep Throat gives him the tip, and he says, I can get you access to a person who can tell you more. And they go to visit the person, and it turns out to be Harriet Harris, who reveals that, yeah, she was behind this whole thing. She set up the clones, and that she herself is a clone, that she was one of the original, she was Eve basically, and that there's all these clones out there. So from this point of view, the theories start running wild, and the two girls, Cindy and Tina, become kind of targets. We see Tina, because she's sort of put in like a care home while they're finding her new foster parents, and she's taken in the middle of the night, and then Cindy becomes a target, and the whole thing starts to escalate. And for a lot of the episode, the sort of suspicions is put on that it's these clones, these Adams and these Eves, and they've all got like numbers, like the one they meet is like Eve 8, basically, the one Mulder and Scully first meet. So it's a really well put together episode. I really like, first of all, I like how it kind of sets you up to think, oh, it is going to be the UFO theory, it is going to be what Mulder's saying, and then it turns out to be something altogether different. I think that was really good, because you're used to Mulder being generally right in his theories, being somewhere in the ballpark, and he got this one totally wrong. And it's good because it opens up the X-Files universe and the mythology. I think, although there had been similar plots before in like sci-fi movies and stuff, I think for the time this is pretty original, and it's something that certainly makes sense for a show like the X-Files to be exploring. And I like the fact that it's something which is set up here, and then you see the idea played with and developed a lot later. But there's two really good swerves in the episode which are both played really nicely, or kind of twists. One is the reveal of, Sally Kendrick actually being a clone, being like Eve 8. And then the later swerve, which is even more brilliant, is that it turns out to be the two young girls. It turns out to be Tina, and it turns out to be Cindy, who have done the killings, because they're going through these theories, both Mulder and Scully, and Mulder basically believes that they killed off the father, that being Adam and Eve, the Eve clones, and they did this so that essentially they would keep them in their family. That's like Mulder's argument. And again, I think certainly when you first watch this, you would maybe go along with that logic, or you might assume that, yeah, that's the villain of the episode is the Harriet Harris character, which is credit to her, obviously, because she is so menacing, so sort of unhinged. She just hooks you into the character. And I think I really like that setup of her in the prison cell, or the sort of psychiatric unit. And it's just her in the dark with these very raw, gothic, like gargoyle-looking features. It's just such a brilliant reveal when it turns out to be her, and it's sort of full of atmosphere. And there's something so twisted and unhinged about her character and the performance. But also, there, as I said, there is a human side to it. She does bring that. She's very sort of vulnerable with it. But yeah, later on, when it's actually revealed that it's the two kids who are doing this, I think it's really well handled, and they're great as well. They just look the part. It's like they're almost doing a riff off like Reagan from The Exorcist. They've got that whole look sort of down. And it's a really well paced episode, a really, really well directed episode. I there's a couple of standout like set pieces. I think the set piece when Tina is taken during the night is it's really good. It's really well shot. You've got like the wind and the rain sort of crackling, and it's a really effective sort of POV type shot. And you're seeing what's happening at the same time, but it's a really eerie sort of scene. And I think as things go on and they escalate, and like the Eve character, Sally Kendrick, has taken the children, even when she's talking to them, when they're in like the same sort of room and stuff, you still sort of think, well, she very much looks like the villain. And they're kind of saying things like, well, we were created, we don't have a father. We were created, we weren't born, which is a great line. But even then, that line, it makes sense later when you see that they are actually the ones orchestrating this. And so it's kind of like Eve is has captured them to protect the world almost. She talks about um like a malfunction in the generics that went wrong, and that it was her mistake. So what she's basically trying to do is like sort of mend her error and atone for it, which I really like, which does make her character more sympathetic subtly, even though there's a lot of blame on her because she's the one who started all this, and it was just a crazy idea. And I think that's another thing about the character. Why you cast this actress, because it's like this mad scientist sort of character who just had such an ego, almost like a drive, but too much of a drive, and she just came up with this insane idea, and she never questioned it. She never questioned like the consequences, and you totally buy her as a mad scientist, but you also buy her as this desperate woman at the end who's trying to like repair this mistake. It's so well done and so revealed, nicely revealed. Like I wouldn't have seen it coming, certainly. So it's very sort of creepy and atmospheric. As I said, really well cast. There's some good stuff with Mulder and Scully. As I said, they both make good early on when Mulder's making the UFO like theory. There's some strong stuff in there, but at the same time, Scully is countering it with some good stuff. One scene I actually like is when they've gone to talk to Cindy the first time, or is it Tina? I'm getting confused. It might have been Tina when they first interview her, and Scully is like suspicious of like Mulder leading her, like leading questions, because he actually gets out of Tina that she basically froze and she saw like this red lightning in the garden, in the backyard sort of thing, around the time the father was killed. And his mind is immediately rushing, and this is like a UFO style experience. But Scully pulls him up on it later to say, "Oh, those leading questions," and I think this is great. Obviously, later on, it's revealed that these girls are behind it and stuff. But there's obviously, for most of the episode, there's this sensitivity because of them being young girls, and I do like that sort of challenging side that Scully has there, where it's like, not only is it a good point, not only can you say, yeah, she does have a point, Mulder was leading with his questions, but also because it's a young girl, I think you have to consider that even more so, because it's like they are more impressionable, they are sometimes easily more easily led, which is why it's great. Then later, when you get the twist, it's like, wow, it's actually Mulder and Scully who have been led down the garden path by these two girls. So there's very little to complain with in the episode, just one or two moments maybe. You get this interesting dynamic towards the end where Mulder and Scully have basically taken the girls and they say, well, we'll look after them, because the girls have basically framed Eve, as in Eve 8, and they poisoned her, but they framed her, making her look like she's the one who did the murders and the rest of it. So they say until they're given foster homes, or we'll take them, basically. So they're looking after them, and you get this kind of like, they're almost exploring the idea of Mulder and Scully as parents, because they're like taking these girls and they buy them cokes at one point, and that's when also $5 for 4 cokes. That sounds pretty good to me. That's how much they're charged at this place. 2 Diet Cokes. I'm not sure if that makes a difference. But yeah, I think they're definitely playing with this idea of Mulder and Scully as parents, maybe, to these two girls. But obviously it's all a setup, and the girls are going to try and poison them. Basically, they sort of play tricks on them, and in the end they're like caught out. And I have to say that the most entertaining like exchange of the whole episode is that when they've figured it out and they're chasing the girls about, and Mulder like grabs onto one of them. They're near like this truck at a time, and they've obviously, this trucker and his wife have pulled over at the station, and he comes out with his gun, and Mulder's like, "Hey, I'm FBI," and he's like, "Well, yeah, but who are they then? America's Most Wanted," which is a great line. And eventually they convince them that they are legit when the girls run out of. And I do like Mulder's line or something about, it's either Mulder or Scully. It might be Scully actually, and because the trucker says something like, "We'll call the police" or something, and she's like, "We are the police," or "We are the law," something like that. So that's pretty funny, but there's one or two moments like that which maybe feel a bit sort of silly. But no, it's a really tight episode. It's really solid. And there's a good sort of cliffhanger type thing at the end of it, when there is kind of a turn and you see like the girls in an institution, and you see the other Eves who are still alive, and we see that one of them has snuck in and has a lab coat, so it's almost like she's going to try and get the others out. But one of those cliffhangers, as I said, they do sort of return to super soldiers later in the series, but I don't think they return to these characters. I can't remember for sure. They might. I don't think they do. I guess it's just one of those endings. But it's a really strong episode actually, and I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I rewatched it last night and thought it was really strong, and I think season 1's starting to get on a bit of a roll, because we've obviously had Ice recently. We've obviously had Fallen Angel. and it sort of keeps building momentum. I know there are still some rough ones, I think, to come, but this one I do like a lot. So when it comes to the X-Files list, the episode list, I'm going to rank it highly. I'm going to rank it at number 3. So that's above Squeeze, believe it or not, and it's just below Fallen Angel. So yeah, I really, really enjoy this episode. It was a tough call. I don't think there's, I mean, Squeeze is a classic. I don't think there's much in it, but I obviously love the villain in Squeeze, and it's a strong episode, but maybe there's just something that a little more that I get out of this episode overall. It's maybe a bit more satisfying. So, yeah, good stuff. I think it definitely improves on more watches. So that's my review of Eve, and next time it's going to be Fire, episode 12 of the first season. And actually, this coming week on Monday, I think I'm planning this, I'm going to be doing a live stream, a double watch actually, and that will be of Fire and then Beyond the Sea, the next 2 episodes. So, very different episodes. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you like the X-Files and you want more of this sort of stuff, then please like the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and also share it with your friends on social media. You can also ding the bell on YouTube to get more notifications, like when I go live for a live stream or when one of these reviews goes up. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.